In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. On this particular Sunday, which is the 10th Sunday after Trinity, we have a very interesting gospel, taken from that, in many ways perhaps most fascinating of the Gnostic Gospels, the Gospel of Philip, wherein we find the following words. We had them read for us, of course, a little while ago. The holy man is holy altogether down to his body. For if he has received the bread, he will make it holy, or the cup, or anything else that he receives, purifying them. Therefore, how could he not purify the body also? And then there are various ancillary sentences added to that. These words of Gospel of Saint Philip, I think, dispel some unfortunate impressions and clarify certain issues that previously have not been subject, perhaps, to such clarification. One of them being that Gnostics hate the body, hate their body. Well, I only hate it when it hurts, and that they are sorely disdainful of anything material. And this, of course, the same accusation, only even more powerfully, has been voiced against the teachings of the Holy Prophet Mani, whose portrait icon hangs over there on that side of the altar, painted by our dear and great painter Jan Seter, and also against the Manichaean teachings. I'm a little bit thinking about that at the present time, because I'm speaking about Mani and his teachings at this month, on Fridays. And there also, it has become this sort of common journalistic lingo that when, they are dualists, people are dualists, and they hate everything material and so forth, and that's Manichaean. So again, it's a long-established lie. And so, but here is, in these few sentences of Philip, I think we find really the proper exclamation. The issue is that when there is gnosis, and when there is someone in whom the gnosis dwells, beautifully and powerfully, such a person can purify various things. And the example is used is, of course, of the Mass, that just like in the Holy Eucharist, we purify the bread, wafer for us, the wine, and then it becomes the vehicle of very great forces as the mystical body and blood of Christ. In the same manner, material things can be purified, whatever they may be, including our own bodies themselves. And not just a kind of customary and certainly very pleasant purification that we enjoy in this country with the wonderful showers and plumbing that we have available to us. It's a very great purification. You don't find it in many places, but that's a physical purification. And so then the question arises, perhaps, when one is not very familiar with the mythos, why is such purification necessary? The purification is necessary because material things, as well as psychic things, things of the psyche, in the course of the aeons of emanation, have become solid, have become contaminated. They have elements in them which are not very desirable, which are troublesome. And I think we can all prove that to ourselves, because how often in the day do the things flare up within us? Oh, geez, I'm really getting angry. I really would like to tell off, these people. And all sorts of things of that sort. And then afterwards you wonder, geez, why do I have these impulses? This is not really me. I know that it's not even physically good for us to get angry, because all that adrenaline just works havoc with various things in our system. It's much more important than eating right and exercising, okay, is to watch the adrenaline in our system. So, you know why? And we in our culture are wont to ask why. And the why, mythologically, poetically, intuitively, that is offered to us by the tradition of Gnosis is that in the course of the long history of life, the lowest emanations of the ultimate essence have become alienated from their source. They no longer had good contact with the source, with the Father, and they have become corrupted. They have tendencies within them that are dark. And the world became like the checkerboard, of which some of us have some knowledge within a fraternal and ritualistic context. A black square, a white square, a black square and a white square. And so if for certain important purposes, just for then, you know, we require the light, we require the white. We know we can't have it there all the time because that's the nature of the world. But just like in the Eucharist, we purify with incense, we purify with all the words of the ritual, we purify the substance, the material substance, so that it may be the vehicle of the divine for us. And so we can do under various other circumstances. And this means, therefore, that it does not, that certain aspects of emanation or of creation are not evil or bad in themselves, but that they are in need of purification. And when purified, then they become extremely useful. People misread things, of course, we all do. In the Gospel of Thomas, for instance, there's a famous passage of where Jesus says that it's there, and it's also was found in the so-called Oxyrhynchus papyrus earlier. In any event, raise the stone and thou shalt find me. Cleave the wood and I am there. And the sort of spiritual materialists say, see, that means that Christ is the stone. I don't know, maybe that's some, I won't go any further. Petrification, stonification, or getting stoned, which all means the same thing. But or that he's in the wood, in the tree. Interestingly enough, this is not the tree hugging expression, because the tree is obviously cut already. Split the wood. So I don't know if you want to hug a bunch of cut wood, that's fine with me. But it means, and it's easily forgotten, it doesn't just mean that he's there. It means that you got to do something to get to him or to it. You have to split the wood. You have to raise the stone. And these are the alchemical and other spiritual processes whereby the material substance is purified and maybe at times even transformed. It's a very different thing from this kind of neo-pagan business of worshipping the grass and worshipping the grasshopper and everything else, because there's nothing to worship there, but there is something to alchemically change there when the time comes. And so this is what needs to be kept in mind. And we certainly, therefore, we are not enemies of the material world, although perhaps it would be nice to be living elsewhere. Not on the moon or something, there's too much dust there, but not in this environment, maybe. But the principal issue is that if we apply, first of all, if we raise our consciousness, which is more important than raising the stone, and then by way of that, we can bring the power of purified consciousness to bear on all sorts of things and to make them thereby purer, clearer, and more serviceable to our spiritual purposes. That is the true position of the Gnosis, which it always had, including in the teachings of Mani and elsewhere, and which it still does have. But we have to pay attention to it. Because when that is not the case, then our psyche and our lives become muddled. There is too much mud in them. I don't know whether that's where muddled comes from. Probably does. It comes from mud. They become dark. They become impure. And that is not the proper way to be and the proper way to live. And so we must devote some attention to the clarification, to the purification, to the sanctification of things, of life itself. Things can be sanctified, but if they are not sanctified, then they are very troublesome. And that is why there is so much trouble in the world, because there is not enough sanctification. There is not enough making holy. What's that, you know? Nobody pays any attention to that, but we should. And if we do, I think then we will find that our lives, our affairs, our association with people and the things that we engage in will be of a much more purposeful, much more clear, a much more holy nature than they might be otherwise. We can't wait for these things to happen on their own. This has been, I think, the big problem with evolution, especially when the evolutionary concept is applied to spiritual things, because as even the biologists point out, evolution is an extremely slow situation, and therefore transformation, preceded by purification, that is the way of the Gnostic. And that is, I think, what we need to do. We can't wait for things to get better and get wonderful just with the passage of time. And in that case, we have to come back and back and back thousands of times into incarnation. And I tell you, just even coming back once is enough. I mean, you know, it's too much trouble, for heaven's sakes. I hated it at the moment that I was born. To have to come into this mess. And you know what? A great many experiences in my life justified that early feeling and that early impression, quite. So we need to apply ourselves to that as much as we can. It's thoughtfulness, the ability to look at ourselves, the ability of self-observation and self-examination, and thereby the purifying of the vehicles and enabling them to become ever more efficient, ever more wonderful, ever more glorious vehicles of the eternal light, which shines in the aeons and which can shine ever more greatly in our own natures and in this world also, if we apply ourselves to these tasks. And so may the mystery of that which hangs fixed heaven and earth descend upon us and remain with us always. Amen.